Good evening, everyone. Srinivas and I Idris, we will be presenting today about the statistical databases. We will be covering what statistical databases are, how they actually work. We will then give you guys an example about a real-world statistical database. We will talk about statistical data, types of statistical databases, data aggregation, and how statistical databases are protected. To begin, let's talk about what statistical databases are. Statistical databases are databases that respond only to aggregate queries. For example, sum, average, count queries that we are all now familiar with after completion of this database class. These databases are used by many organizations which need to store and analyze data, some of which may contain sensitive data, such as a student's GPA, income of a staff member, or social security number of a citizen. Information about an individual entity or event is treated as sensitive information. Now, aggregate queries on candidate key as the attribute will always reveal sensitive individual information. But in case of statistical database management systems, the systems will do the basic filtering and allow only aggregate queries on non-key attributes. Now, how do these statistical databases actually work? These databases, as we discussed in earlier slides, of course respond to basic aggregate queries such as count, average, sum. But it should be noted that the use of the where query is very limited, obviously because of the relationship the where query can have with identifying or isolating records that could contain confidential information. These databases function basically as online analytical processing, or OLAP as we all know it, rather than online transaction processing systems, also called OLTPs. Organizations may choose to build a statistical database from ground up, or if they find it feasible, and if they already have a relational database management system, they could build a statistical database right on top of, the, of their current RDBMS. Now, for the real-world example of a statistical database, we've got CityGas, the International Association for Natural Gas, which is built and maintained a statistical database to aggregate data from numerous countries, which you can see here on this slide, data about their natural gas resources and aggregates them into one. Now, as we did our research, we weren't able to obtain information about any country's specific natural gas resources and data about it. This could be simply because CityGas is interested in charging parties who are interested about a specific data about a specific country. But whatever the reason may be, data for each country's natural gas resources is kept confidential and treated as confidential data. As you can see this, you can only see aggregated information here. Nothing about any country's specific natural gas resources.
Statistical data. Statistical data mainly consists of three types: microdata, macrodata, and metadata. Microdata. Microdata is the data about individuals. For example, a person's details like email, first name, last name, age, etc. Or a single person's channel preferences. Example, some persons prefer Facebook Messenger over WhatsApp or other emails. On the other hand, macro data is summarized or aggregated data. Example, a group of users with emails that end with @syr.edu, or a group of customers who prefer Facebook Messenger over other channels. Macro data is more about estimated values of statistical characteristics or statistics. And third type of data is metadata. As we all know, metadata is data about data. Types of statistical databases. There are mainly two types of databases. First type is static. A static database once made cannot be changed. Example, census or DMV data. Dynamic. Dynamic databases changes continuously to reflect real-time data. Example, most online databases are dynamic. In this slide, we will discuss some methods how the data aggregation is achieved in statistical databases. As one of the methods, aggregate queries are restricted to functions like sum, count, average, and standard deviation. In another method, instead of returning exact values of sensitive data, a range of values are written. Like, a particular query on census data can return values as 18 to 21 years instead of exact age of an individual. The third method is by limiting some of SQL clauses like where. Security methods for statistical databases. Security methods for statistical databases can broadly be classified into three types: data perturbation, query restriction, microaggression. The first method is data perturbation. Perturbation is nothing but causing disruption or disturbance. In this method, often perturbed database is first created by adding noise to the original database, and then the users are allowed to query this perturbed database instead of original database. By doing so, the end user is not allowed to access sensitive information. The second method is query restriction. In this method, a query set size limit number of records that must be in the result set. Query restriction method cannot avoid inference, but they accurate response to valid queries. The third method is microaggression. In this method, original data is averaged and then divided into the smaller chunks. Then the users are allowed to query on those micro-aggregated samples to ensure confidentiality or privacy. Thank you.